Okay, I've been wanting to make this video for quite a while now, and kind of based on this book that I've had for since the 1980s sometime. It's by Sam Slaymaker. It's called Tie a Fly, Catch a Trout. Now, that's a simple version of a simple concept to tie a fly and catch a trout, and honestly, there's really not much beyond that. You can pretty much use anything. If you're new to fly fishing, you got to understand. There's all kinds of books out that tell you, like the patterns, that what you have to, gives you recipes on how to make a fly and all that. And they're good guides to go by. But by no means do you have to use the exact same things. That's what they're calling for in those books. These are, like I said, these are good guides, but by no means, there's no fly police out there to tell you you can't use this or you can't use that. So what I'm going to do today is I'm just going to tie a basic nymph fly, which is a wet fly, simulates some food that bounces along the bottom that trout eat. And I'm only going to use just a couple materials just so to show you how simple it can be. Now, what I've got is I've got a little bit of rabbit fur. You can use anything. I've even used fur off my dog, and they all work. All right. You want to try to match the size and the color of the food that your trout are eating in the streams near you. Okay. And honestly, if you don't have trout in your area, if you're living in the south, you have a lot of bluegill, brim, whatever you want to call them, they eat the same things. So just because we're tying this, I live in Pennsylvania, we have a lot of trout streams around here, but if you don't want to fish for trout or you can't, by all means, tie a fly, catch a panfish, catch a largemouth bass. It's really, there's no limitation to what you can do. Don't let fly fishing be intimidating to you. It's very easy. There's a lot of folks out there that try to make it more difficult than what it really is. Don't let that fool you, okay? So basically, again, rabbit fur. I have a feather that I found in the ground. Kind of matches the same color. I have some black thread that I'm going to use. I have a number, looks like a number 12 hook, and a little bit of wire tinsel. And that is it. All right. So I'm going to show you how to do this real quick. It's not going to be difficult at all. In order to start to fly the thread on the fly, you want to just hook it over and wrap it back over itself. Okay, it's that simple. All right, you don't need all these fancy tools and things. I mean, I have quite a few of them here, but as you progress in fly tying, you can buy more. But really, all it takes is something to put thread on a hook and a pair of scissors. That's really all you need. Okay, to start with, I'm going to tie a piece of this ribbon in, and this is just to give it a little bit of flash when it's under the water. Do you need it? Absolutely not. Don't have to have it. I like to do it just because I think it gives my fly a little more realism, but by all means, you don't have to do it. Let me cut a piece off there. All right, there we have our piece of wire. I'm going to tie that in the very back end. And you always want to start at the back end of the fly. That's the easiest way to do it. I say always, most of the time. There are flies that you start at the front, but for the majority of flies like this, you want to just tie that in at the back end of it. And just leave it lay back there. All right, it's out of the way. It's not bothering anybody, but it's tied in. Okay. Next we need a little bit of a tail. That's where this feather comes in. We're just going to strip off a few little pieces of that. And really that's all we have, just that much. Okay. We're going to lay that up along the hook. And there's all kinds of recipes out there for how long it has to be and all that. Again, it's up to you to do it. You can put it as long or as short as you want. As long as it works, who cares? And there it is, tied in. We're going to trim off the excess up here, up front. just so the fly doesn't get too bulky. We'll wrap that down, make sure it's nice and tight. Now we're going to get to the basic body of the fly. All right, and all this is a bunch of this little fur like that. See how I pulled that out? Pull a little bit more. And we're going to spin that on to the thread. In fly fishing, fly tying terms, that's called dubbing. And really, that's all that is. You spin it onto the thread. You can slide it up. And you wind that onto the hook. Oh, looks like you need a little more. No problem. Pull a little bit more out. Spin that on. Slide it up. And away you go. A little bit more. All right. Now you see we have the body of the fly. It looks kind of woolly and all that. I mean, it kind of just not pretty. But you know what? Fish do not care. To the fish, that may look like legs hanging out there. So we're just going to leave it. I'm going to take this wire that we used back here earlier. I'm going to tie that in. I'm going to just kind of spiral it around the shank of the hook. Just a little bit forward. And all that does, again, that just gives it a little bit of shine in the water. Right. We're going to tie that off up front. And one thing I'd caution you, when you're new to fly tying, you don't want to crowd what's called the head of the hook. That's up here, which is where the eye is. You want to give yourself a little bit of room back there, just so you can finish it off nicely. Now I like to put a little bit of like legs up front. So again, we're going to use that same feather we used before. Tear a little piece off, and this time we're just going to hold it down at the bottom. And wrap that in. Again, nobody cares how your fly looks except you and the trout. If you're going to make them to sell, that's a whole different ballgame because you got to please the customer. But right now, we're just talking about pleasing yourself. And really, that's all there is to that. Now the fly is almost done. We have to tie this thread off now to make sure that it doesn't unravel. What I like to do is it's called a half hitch, and that's just a little twist in the line and pull it down. You can see that, how it pulls down. Now there are other tools to use. You can use this, basically the same thing. This is called a whip finisher, and essentially the way you do that is this. Every tool has its own guidelines, so make sure you follow the instructions that come with your tools, but really that's all it is. Now we're going to cut the thread off because it's tied off. It's not going to unravel. A lot of people like to, you can fish it just like that to give it a little more durability. I like to put what we call fly tying head cement. Now, when you're starting out fly tying, everything adds up. I mean, you spend $4 for a bottle of fly tying head cement, or you can go to Walmart and buy a bottle of clear Sally Hansen's hard as nails nail polish. It's the same thing, all right? Maybe a little chemical difference, but it serves a purpose. It does wonderful. And it costs you like $1.50, if that. And I'm only using this little dubbing needle just so I can be a little more precise in where I put it there. And that is a done fly. It's done. Completely done. Just drying it off. I'll show you the finished product. There it is. That will catch a trout. I guarantee it. Now, we use two materials. I'm going to put that back in the vise here. Use two materials to tie that. If you go to the Orvis Fly Pattern Index, find a nymph here. You see, this is essentially what we did here. They call this a small black puka. They call for brown fur, hen hackle, some more fur, a couple other things on there. All we really did was just tie it on. There's all kinds of recipes you can do for nymphs and things. If you really want to get into it, you want to tie a casing on it to make it more realistic looking. Whatever. That's entirely up to you. I guarantee you, 99% of the trout that you're casting this over do not care. There are 1% out there that get finicky. They want to eat only one certain types. If you're in really slow moving water, you have to be a little more realistic on the way things are tied. But overall, all you need, very simple things. I guarantee that will catch fish. And as soon as trout season starts around here, which is in another month, we're going to tie that on. We're going to make another video and show us catching a trout on that very fly. Okay, that's it for part one. Stay tuned for